Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do.
But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys. Remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy. Remember that guy.
They're just gonna remember some guys now.
1-2, he swing and a miss. Greatness from Gage, a no-hitter. Only the third no-hitter in the history over 78 years of Remember That Guy, the show where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players, past and present. Hey there, folks. It is me, one of your hosts, James, and I'm here with a guy who has more than one hit on his resume.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. 78, as the intro just conveyed. Diaz back with you once again. We do have a very special guest. He is the last person before Gage to have a no-hitter in the College World Series. I just made that up, but he's a pretty cool guy. Please introduce yourself.
Whoever that guy was, I think that was 60 years ago, so I don't remember that. But
65.
The way I was going to introduce myself was thanks to James. I was going to say, it's me, the unknown French boy, who might not actually even be French.
Okay.
Who's the youngest Olympic medalist.
Can I just do, I did just post about this. Can I just do Making Memories then? Because I need to show
please.
real quick, just like the thing that I was going to talk about ahead of time. I had a game and everything prepared. I'm throwing that out. I do want to mention real quick. I've been watching a lot of videos of the cyclist Lachlan Morton, who is Australian. And he is like a pro rider, but mostly what he does is insane shit. Like, oh, I'm just going to ride around the circumference of Australia, or I'm going to ride the length of the Rocky Mountains. Like hour and a half long YouTube videos. Incredible. I'll link to his page in the description. Love watching it. Here's my new favorite Wikipedia page ever. Some background real quick. Rowing was supposed to be in the inaugural Modern Olympics in 1896 held in Athens. There was too much wind. They couldn't do it. They postponed it until the 1900 Olympics held in Paris, and they do have rowing in the Seine River. Quick mid-Atlantic shout out to our boys from Philadelphia's Boathouse Row, the Vesper team, who did win the 8-person medal. But the 2-person team, the Coxed Double, I want to talk about this for 1 sec. Technically, a mixed nationality team won this. Because there were a couple of Dutchmen who had been riding with the Dutch coxswain up to this point. Their names, the two Dutchmen, Francois Brandt and Roloff Klein. Their buddy, Hermanus Brockman, who was the coxswain, they decided, you're too heavy. This is weighing down the boat too much. We have no chance. And so they went into the audience and they just picked a random child from the Parisian crowd. And this child, whose name is not known, is the person they have. He's so light. Then he is serving as the coxswain. They have to like weigh him down with additional kilos and stuff to just have a balanced boat. But they do manage to win. And so this kid, estimated to be like maybe 8 years old or so when he participates, is, if that's true, the youngest Olympic winner ever. The youngest confirmed, by the way, I did see this also on the page, Dimitrios Lundras, who was a 10-year-old Greek athlete who competed in those 1896 games. But here in 1900, we have this 8-year-old boy, and no one knows anything about him for the rest of history. There's one photo of him, and you can find all of this out on my new favorite Wikipedia page, Unknown French Boy. And the story is incredible, but the thing that I think is best about it is there's no parentheses after that. This isn't like Unknown French Boy parentheses rowing, or Unknown French Boy parentheses Olympics. I just would have thought, in the grand scheme of human history, there would have been more than one Wikipedia notable unknown French boys to have come about. And the fact that not only is this unknown French boy just a delightful story, it is apparently the only story worthy enough in the history of unknown French boys to make a Wikipedia page. And so, I put this up on Blue Sky earlier today, but if you didn't see it, man, Unknown French Boy, banger.
My favorite part of the Wikipedia article is that under the personal information, like square on the right, it says nationality, possibly French. Because they don't know if he's actually French or not.
There's a whole conspiracy that I read up. This is how I found it initially, because it was like on the Wikipedia main page. Hey, just hang on Wikipedia more. It's an amazing resource, and you should donate money to it also. Anyway, they were like, it's actually not believed that this unknown French boy who participated is a Georgian mathematician. I was like, you're dispelling, like, I don't know what the starting point of this is, and we need to rewind the whole thing. And that's how I found the page for Unknown French Boy. Go check it out and hang out on Wikipedia and give them money. And could the two of you now please give me what it is that's making memories for you?
Well, I think it's about time that we had an Annapolis Blues update. It's been the inaugural season for the women, the third season for the men, both now playing in the USL system. And for the men, it's been a bit of an adjustment. They started out 4-1 and were atop the division, but it has been 3 consecutive home losses for the Annapolis Blues. And that is in spite of the continuing record crowds and the continuing amazing support that Annapolis is giving them. But there's clearly a step up in competition at this next level. And they're still playing very well. Last night, a tough 2-0 loss. They were the better team. They had a penalty go off the crossbar. They had 2 other shots hit the post. Both of the goals for Virginia Beach United were just the messiest, sloppiest. If you were playing FIFA, you would be like, how the fuck did this ball all of a sudden land at their striker's feet right in front of the goal? This is bullshit. I'm resetting the game. Except it was reality. You can't reset the game. You just have to accept the tough loss. So, going to be a tough road for them to make it into the playoffs. It's only the top 2 from their division. They are pretty firmly 4th on the table now. If they'd won last night, they would still control their own destiny. But nonetheless, still a very good showing in the first season in USL 2 for the men. The women, however, are who we have to turn our attention to because they have been making an absolute laugh of it, as they say over in Britain. I'm going to pull up the standings to confirm the exact current, but what I can confirm before I even look that up is that with 2 games to go, they have already wrapped up the Chesapeake Division title. They are uncatchable. They are far and away the best. They are 7-0-1, so 7 wins with only the 1 draw, and a plus 23 goal differential in 8 games. They capped it off last night with a win and in to guarantee their spot as champions of their division. They won 8-0. They were up 5-0 at halftime. They are just absolutely dominating. And it's a lot of local flavor to the DMV area. So if you are a college soccer fan, you'll be able to watch a lot of them. You got Bailey DeSmit from Loyola, among others, she being the leading goal scorer for the team. And they just kick ass, man. It is so awesome to see. And while the attendance is a little less for the women, and that's pretty lame, it is still far and away so much more than any other team at that level. So Annapolis continuing to do it right, continuing to build, continuing to instill a soccer culture in the greater DMV area. And we love to see it. And, hopefully the men are able to turn it around. They're still at the midway point of their season. So there is time to string together some wins, get it going. Seemed like they figured some things out tactically in the second half last night. But up the Blues. Up the Blues, up the boy Blues, up the girl Blues, up all the Blues.
I'm thrilled to hear about the Blue Invincibles on the women's side. I do want to come back to the men's side for once. So you touched on this briefly, but I just want to get a little bit more of a feel for how is the crowd handling a 3-game losing streak? We're talking about record attendance. We've been talking about record attendance from the beginning, and we've been talking about dominance from the beginning, which helps feed that record attendance. What is kind of the feel in the stands as they experience some adversity?
Well, like a true mid-Atlantic, upset fan base, the boos were vociferous for the ref last night.
Okay.
I thought he, mostly handled the game well. The game before was there were a combined 32 fouls called in the game prior. 0 flow to the game, but the attendance numbers, are still very impressive. Their game last night on a Wednesday, midweek day, where the weather was absolutely atrocious. Genuinely some of the worst storms I've ever had to drive through in my life. They still got 7,000 fans out on a random Wednesday evening in the middle of the summer to watch what is still glorified semi-pro is basically still the level they're at. It's a better semi-pro than the league they were in previously. But no, the fan support is still incredibly impressive. What was funny, on Father's Day, there was a doubleheader, and there was a pretty significant downpour during one part of the game. But if you've never been to Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, the second deck comes down and covers about the last, let's say, 15 rows of the first deck. So if you're watching on TV, from our shot, you don't see anybody. But then we had another camera that was just like, oh, just like pan up and just show the crowd. Absolutely packed last 10 rows of the section. Just everybody up under the overhang, getting refuge from the rain. So that's the long answer. The short answer is the crowds are not going anywhere. They love their Blues. There were still so many kids on the field for an autograph session afterwards. Because, I feel like, especially for, the kids, win or lose, they'd rather them win. But, at the end of the day, they still get to get on the field. They still get to meet pro athletes. They still get to, have all that. And, that's really what the Blues have done such a great job of. There's the community involvement. The sponsors aren't just, throwing a sign out there and, that's it. The sponsors are coming to the games. The sponsors are, part of the tailgate. It's really, one of the most unique cultures, and in the words of their deputy CEO, who we had a chance to interview at the start of the season, it's the biggest story in soccer that nobody's talking about. But eventually, people are going to have no choice but to talk about it.
We will continue to talk about it, and this is one of those, there aren't a lot of things in life where I can say, I like that before it was big. This is one thing we'll be able to say at some point. Speaking of things that are big, Xavier, what's making big feelings for you right now? What's making memories?
I think it's a little bittersweet, but I want to just give a shout out to Chris Kreider, lifelong Ranger, traded because the Rangers suck at managing their cap, and they just had to find a way to make some space. It hurts because there are other people that we would prefer to move that we couldn't because of no trade clauses and things like that. But I just want to reflect back on the 13 years of Kreider being a Ranger and the awesome memories that he's made for me and all Rangers fans. I mean, it's I think back of every positive playoff memory since college, and he's in all of them. Game winners against the Penguins. There was his natural hat trick in Game 6 against the Hurricanes just last year. He scored multiple different overtime winners. It's always tough when you're trading or getting rid of a player who is kind of the soul of your team. And I would say Kreider is certainly the soul of the team. And it hurts in that because he never won a title, I'm not sure how he's going to be remembered. Maybe it's not as big of a deal for the Rangers because no one at the Rangers ever wins titles, so all of our all-time greats, for the most part, are trophyless. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Rangers after this, because they still have a lot to do, and if it turns out they just sign some crappy third-line center as the only work they can do, it's just going to feel awful. They probably are going to have to trade Keandre Miller. They might have to do more surgery. Chris Drury is good at dumping salary without having to retain anything, but he's not good at anything else. He's not good at giving out contracts. He's not good at signing people. So it's going to be tough to see what happens. It's kind of the end of an era. We already talked last year about Sam Rosen not calling games anymore. So with no Sam Rosen and no Chris Kreider, it's a Rangers team I just haven't seen in my adult life. So it's going to be interesting next year. They might still make a lot of moves before the draft next week. So we'll see what happens with that. I think they technically could still choose not to to give their pick to the Penguins up until the day before the draft, which is kind of wild. But I don't know. I kind of feel weird about how the Rangers are going to look next year. But just want to reflecting on the good times. A lot of good times, even if there were no titles. I can't, be too upset about one Stanley Cup Finals appearance, 6 Eastern Conference Finals appearances, even if we lost 5 of them. But It's a good team, and he was the soul of that team, so it's going to be a new era. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Also, Diaz, your not boy Ace Bailey canceled his Sixers visit, and apparently has refused to visit with any team.
Well,
This is
the only
perfect.
thing that I can assume is that he heard our most recent episode in which I correctly identified him as a complete fraud who wants nothing more than to get up 25 shots a night on a dog shit team that's going to win 20 games. That's who he is. That's what his profile is. He's going to be like...
When's the Wizards' first pick, is what it sounds like.
The Wizard pick 6th.
6.
Yeah, Ace Bailey to the Wizards feels perfect.
Well, like...
Ace Camp has expressed the belief that teams such as the Wizards, Pelicans, or Nets picking 6, 7, 8 will be aggressive looking to move up in the draft and select him.
Well, here's the thing.
Wizards take
Why would
Ace
they be
Bailey?
aggressive to
Yeah.
move up and pick him when he is explicitly refusing to even entertain the idea of going to teams 3 through 5? Like, what are you trading up for? I'm getting such strong Shador energy from this whole fucking
Yeah.
thing. Like,
He doesn't have any family connections to any sport, right?
no, not to my knowledge.
Just as the one element.
But like, dude, he is. I think it's a non-zero chance he falls outside the top 10. I think it's a very non-zero chance. Like, I would put it like a 15% chance. Like, it's not a strong chance, but we talk about this is obviously it's the Cooper Flag draft. Dylan Harper's clearly number 2. 3 through like 11, you can kind of sort in whatever order you want. And I wouldn't touch Ace Bailey with the fucking 10-foot pole, man. The whole thing just has such weird, bad energy about it. And he's not good enough to have weird, bad energy. Ben Simmons was good enough to have weird, bad energy. And he was still a very good player for his first 5-6 seasons. Ace Bailey is not good enough. He simply is not.
Well, speaking of LSU players turned pros, Diaz, I think that is a perfect segue for us into our main segment today on yet another game-breaking guy. It is you who will be presenting on this individual, and I'm ready to hear what you got. I think Xavier is too. I think America is too. And anyone listening outside of America, we do have some international listeners. Hi, welcome to the show. What you got for us, Diaz?
Well, yes, welcome into the show. And yes, we do have another LSU Tiger to come this week. And, when we talk about game breakers, we can look at it from a couple different perspectives. First of all, just the game on the court. Sometimes players come along that completely transform the way that the game is viewed, the game is played. And then we can also look at off the court. Sometimes there's some guys that will, take such a controversial stance that, people have no choice but to form an opinion, to form a take on that person and their beliefs. And, traditionally when we look at the common idea of who was the first great shooter, or not the first great shooter, who truly transformed the way that basketball is played. And obviously the answer is Steph Curry. And when we think of major protests from athletes in America, particularly as it relates to the national anthem, first person we think of is Colin Kaepernick. But in both cases, there is a guy who kind of set the path out for those two, tested the waters earlier, and it's the same guy for both of them. The first person to just bomb away from 3 and make us view basketball differently. The first person to protest the national anthem before the playing of games and lead to great controversy, but still remaining resolute in their principles, is my guy this week, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Vancouver.
It's going to be fun.
Well, no, wait. I know we will land on the Grizzlies. Do we land in Vancouver with Mahmoud? I don't mean to.
Yeah, no, it was before they went to Memphis.
Okay, yeah, it is Vancouver. It's like the Mike Bibby Grizzlies.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's the exact same era. The one thing, so anytime that there is an American-born person, and he was born Chris Wayne Jackson on March 9th, 1969, very nice, in Gulfport, Mississippi. Anytime there is a U.S.-born person who converts to Islam and changes their name in accordance with that, usually the name has some meaning. Like Muhammad Ali was, the Great One, something like that. I forget exactly. I tried to look up what Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf means, and I got absolutely nothing. So I'm sure it means something very holy and very cool, but I wasn't able to figure it out. Muhammad Ali, we should set the record straight on exactly what that name means.
I'm not finding good information on it. Like, he said it means beloved of God, according to Yale News.
Exalted and praiseworthy is what I'm getting for Muhammad Ali.
And for instance, like one that I can say I'm more confident of, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's is like noble, powerful servant. So there's a lot of those. Like Abdul, if I'm not mistaken, is like some kind of conveyance of power, since that is a very common one. I didn't take any Arabic classes, so I'm not going to try and talk out of my ass here. There is someone here that
in it, and I don't know.
I was hoping maybe the resident expert would be able to chime in, but that's absolutely fine. But he was born, again, as we said, Chris Wayne Jackson, so I'm going to try to, I'll refer to him as Chris Jackson up until the point where he does change his name, and then we'll refer to him as Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. But to begin, Chris Wayne Jackson, born in Gulfport, Mississippi, raised by a single mother, Jacqueline. He had brothers Omar and David, and they were raised in pretty severe poverty, as you may guess, for somebody growing up in the rural South. And growing up, while he did play basketball, he didn't play formally in any kind of way. Until he got to middle school, he was just shooting around at the playground one day when the girls' coach for the middle school team took notice of him and, noticed how good he was, noticed how good of a shooter he was, and was able to reach out to his mom, who, obviously wanted him to focus on his studies, but the coach able to convince her and say, hey, look, basketball could be a way out for you guys. Chris is very, very talented. So he does start playing in middle school. And by the time he reaches high school, he's already a viral sensation within the Mississippi basketball scene. Instantly becomes, the best player for his school. One noteworthy incident while he's with high school, they're doing a free throw shooting drill. And it's basically keep shooting until you miss. Chris Jackson holds up practice for 45 minutes because he makes 300 consecutive free throws, which is just absolutely bonkers.
I want to pause, maybe this is a little pedantic, but just out of curiosity, when you say he's going viral in the area, we're talking, early 80s? There weren't, tapes of him going around, right? This is just, he is big in this space. It's the word of mouth thing. It's not, any kind of documentation that's going around.
Right, yeah. Purely word of mouth.
Could have called up Rodney Mullen. The Skater Boys could have made some really nice mixtapes for him.
They could have. They absolutely could have.
I'm kind of surprised there's never been a big cultural crossover between the And One mixtape universe and skate videotape universes. And if anyone's listening who thinks they can do something smart with that, free idea for you. But that is something that seems like it kind of would have come around by now.
I feel like if I had to guess, I would guess maybe the videographers. I would guess there's some crossover. There's definitely somebody that has shot a viral skateboard VHS and also shot an And One mixtape. There has to be some crossover there. But the thing that really helps Chris Jackson to hone in on this is he is obsessive about his shooting form. When he's practicing free throws, he had a goal at the end of every practice to make 10 straight free throws. But not just make, he counted hitting the rim at all as a miss. And that level of obsession with perfection, A, will, make you a pretty good basketball player eventually, but B, also may belie some sort of disorder. And it did turn out he did have undiagnosed Tourette syndrome, which he was finally diagnosed with when he was 17. He said when he got the diagnosis, it was there was a weight lifted off his shoulders. It was a feeling that he always had. Now it had a name, and now he had a plan to be able to mend with it. But as we said, once he gets to high school, dominating for Gulfport High School, he is named Mr. Basketball for the state of Mississippi as a senior. And from there, he basically has his pick of any of those kind of Southern powerhouse D1 programs to go to. And what he finally lands on is LSU. He goes to play for LSU. And I didn't check this in advance, but I gotta think this might have been the Shaquille O'Neal LSU teams. Double check that. Indeed it was. Chris Jackson played his freshman year before Shaquille got there. But his sophomore year was when Shaq was a freshman. So, basketball very quickly becoming a major sport down there at LSU. And the freshman year, he doesn't have Shaq yet. But no Shaq means more touches available for Chris Jackson. That means more shots available for Chris Jackson. And when you're as good of a shooter as he was, that means a lot more points for him as well. In just his third game of his freshman season, he scored 48 points, which incredibly was not the freshman record, but not to fear. Later on in the season, he scored 53 points, which did set the NCAA freshman scoring record. And then, not to be outdone by himself, he does outdo himself. And he scores 55 in another game his freshman year. So twice scoring 50 points, another time coming just right up to it. Just an absurd score. And helping to power that is, he is shooting the three-point shot at a volume that has not really been seen at any level yet. And we need to remember, this is when the college three-point line was the length that is still the length for high school basketball, which is that, much shorter arc. But even with that being the case, he's getting up 6.8 threes per game, making them at a 39% clip. He's getting to the foul line 6 times a game, only making 82% of those, which, for anybody else, is a very good free throw percentage. For Chris Jackson, he probably felt a little let down by that. But what he didn't feel let down by was his 30.2 points per game, which was and still is the scoring average record for a freshman in NCAA. On the back of that, he is named the SEC Player of the Year as a freshman. He's named the first team All-America as a freshman. The ground's being set for something pretty special here at LSU. We mentioned that in the sophomore year, a guy by the name of Shaquille O'Neal comes to LSU as well. As you would guess, Chris Jackson's numbers do take a little bit of a hit. As opposed to 30.2 points, he goes to 27.8. But with that gravity of Shaquille O'Neal coming in, he is getting up an additional 3-point attempts per game, making him at a 36% clip. 91% from the line, very impressive number. LSU ends up finishing 23-9. They're the 5 seed in the Southeast. They beat not a Philly school, Villanova, 70-63 in the first round, but they do lose that 4-5 matchup to Georgia Tech.
It's so hard to believe that a team with those two would not be better than that.
Would lose specifically to, hey, maybe I'm showing my ass, but I can't off the top of my head name a pro from Georgia Tech.
I was thinking Chris Paul, but he was Wake Forest.
He's a demon deacon just like Tim Duncan and Hamby. Sorry.
No, Thaddeus Young is a proud Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. But
that almost proves my point a little bit more, though.
That Thaddeus Young.
That's the one we got.
Who, did have that graphic with Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan. I've probably said it before on this podcast, but my favorite thing about that graphic is that was the only night
that it was
in his career that Thaddeus Young could be grouped in with that group.
Is that
wait? There's a thing that I need the two of you to guess here. So the 3 best players on that Georgia Tech team have a nickname that is based off of a movie series that was very popular at this time. An action movie series. Can either of you guess what it is? So
we're talking
early 2000s.
Early 90s still, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that Georgia Tech team. Not the Thaddeus Young Georgia Tech team.
No, the Georgia Tech team that beat this LSU team.
Late 80s film series. Late 80s, early 90s.
The Terminators.
No. If it helps, the first in this series came out in 87. The second in this series came out in 89.
Ghostbusters is 84. I know that's not a action film. I'm just thinking of trios from the 80s. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Dennis Scott, Kenny Anderson, and Brian Oliver were the Lethal Weapon 3 attack which they named before Lethal Weapon 3 came out. So there was only
Okay,
Lethal
now
Weapon
it's
2
good.
at this point. So they were the sequel to Lethal Weapon 2.
Dennis Scott, famous fourth panel member on the 4-man NBA TV desk. And Kenny Anderson, I think he made it pro too. Who was the third guy?
It's Sixers legend Brian Oliver.
Oh, of course, Brian Oliver. How could I forget? Especially on this podcast, which is explicitly about not forgetting. But
And
I did
Oliver's
forget about Brian
son
Oliver.
is JP Tokoto, who is also a Sixers legend.
Oh, man. JP Tokoto. He was... Oh, man. My only memory of JP Tokoto was I was watching like the live Ricky after the draft when we took Tokoto in like the 56th pick, and it was like they were just about to wrap up. The dynamic on the Sixers podcast on draft night is so funny because like Mike lives for the draft and Spike couldn't give less of a fuck about the draft. And they're like 2 hours in and like they're about to wrap up, and then Mike's like, whoa, Spike, I got my guy. They took JP Tokoto, and like, dude, I don't give a fuck about JP Tokoto, but go ahead. JP Tokoto never played a single minute for the Sixers, by the way. But that's the beauty of the draft, which is a good segue because coming off of the sophomore season, you know, expectations are very high for this LSU team. You had a freshman Shaq, now coming back for his sophomore year. Chris Jackson, 2-time consensus All-America, 2-time SEC Player of the Year. This duo, you know, maybe some growing pains in their first year, but you have the electric scoring guard, you have the dominant center big. This should be a duo that is going to be able to lead LSU to a championship. But Chris Jackson is home for the summer at his mom's place. He's cleaning up in the bathroom, and he leans forward onto the sink, and the sink just falls off the wall. And he took this as kind of his sign from above that I can't allow myself to see my mom continue to live in poverty like this. Like, I have this immense talent. There's this league that I can go play in where you get paid to play basketball. You just don't just get an education. And his mom obviously allowed him to play basketball in the first place because of the idea that it would allow him to further his education. So after consulting with her, consulting with his college coach, Dale Brown, they give him the guidance, and he does ultimately decide to go pro. And he is obviously one of the top guys coming out in that 1990 draft. He's taken 3rd overall by the Denver Nuggets. Pretty good draft. You know, we had Derek Coleman went 1st overall that year. Gary Payton, the glove, number 2. The aforementioned Dennis Scott, the 4th member of the 4-man panel on NBA TV. He went 4th to the Orlando Magic. We got Tyrone Hill going 11th. Jason Williams, is that the one that killed people? It is, yeah. He was charged with the accidental shooting death of a limousine driver in 2002. Not the Jay Williams on ESPN, the Jason Williams who did shoot and kill by accident. Which, like, I mean, I don't. From what I know of how guns work, you know, I think you have to be pretty deliberate about pulling it. But that's neither here nor there.
Wait, yes. The New York Post reported that Williams was showing people around his 30,000 square foot house when he aimed a shotgun at Christoffi, the limousine driver, and killed him. Right? I guess he just thought it wasn't loaded, so he literally just aimed the shotgun at this guy, pulled the trigger, and accidentally brutally murdered him.
Jesus. Look, as a person who's never owned a gun, and, you know, I hope to never have to own a gun, but the first rule, and even I know this as a non-gun owner, is every gun is always loaded. Always act as if every gun is always loaded. So, whatever. Jason Williams gets a mention on the podcast.
He goes there. We are concerned with a different shooter. Where does our shooter go?
Our shooter ends up with the Denver Nuggets, and important to mention before we get too far into his career at the Nuggets, Dale Brown, the head coach at LSU, was not only a mentor for him in guiding his basketball career, he also provided some off-court guidance for him. You know, Chris Jackson kind of dealing with questions of identity. He was raised as a Southern Baptist, but found himself questioning that as he grew older. And Dale Brown first gave him a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X. And in reading that, in learning about Malcolm X's conversion to Islam, he then had more interest in learning about Islam. So Dale Brown then gave him a copy of the Quran. And in his rookie year playing for the Denver Nuggets, Chris Jackson did formally convert to Islam and was a practicing Muslim to begin his NBA career. An NBA career that started off pretty well. He was named to the second team all-rookie team in his first season, putting up some solid stats, averaging 14 points a game. But the thing that jumps out to me when I look at Chris Jackson's basketball career is we do have this sharpshooter who proved on pretty high volume in college, granted on a shorter line, that he can be very effective shooting more threes per game than is accepted. In his rookie season, he only takes 1.5 threes a game. Granted, he only makes 24% of them, so that's probably part of it. But it did jump out to me that reduction in volume, and largely due to the three-point line is still a fairly new invention. Teams are still very reticent. Like Larry Bird took like 2 threes a game for his career, which is like insane when you think about it in hindsight. But all that to say, pretty successful rookie season for Chris Jackson. In his second year, plays in 81 games, starts 11 of them. His points per game falls to 10.3. His three-point attempts remain still pretty low, and he makes 33% of them. But it's his third season that ends up being probably the most significant as we talk about his career. First of all, he becomes a full-time starter for the Denver Nuggets. He starts all 82 games. He sees his numbers climb up. He averages 19.2 a game. He has just over 4 assists. He's making 35.5% of his threes on 2.4 attempts a game. And as a result of all that, he is named as the most improved player for the season. But also, in that same season, he makes the name change. So now it is no longer Chris Jackson. It is now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. And one of the things that jumps out to me when I look at his career is, you would think coming off of this third season, he just got most improved player. It seems like he's starting to find his footing. You would think this is going to lead to, him really taking off and ascending into the stardom that we could kind of expect from him based on his LSU career. It really doesn't happen that way. He's still just playing in Denver, plays the next 3 seasons, still a full-time starter, but still not able to break through that 20-point per game barrier. And when we get to the 95-96 season is when we get to the national anthem controversy with them. Having now been a practicing Muslim for 6 years and in reconciling his faith with, the whole gestures at American history, he's unable to reconcile these two things. And the way that he says about it is like, to me, you cannot live in both good and evil. You cannot be for God and for the devil. This country has a very complicated past. So he begins to remain seated during the playing of the national anthem. And if you thought this was controversial in 2016, it was like they didn't even consider it as a possibility in 1996 to not stand for the national anthem. And, David Stern, being the very reasonable, non-iron-fisted commissioner that he is, completely understood this and, supported. No, he didn't. He suspended and fined Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf his game check for all the games for which he would not stand for the national anthem. But Mahmoud is very resolute in his conviction, so he had no problem. Look, I will continue eating this fine. I will continue. David Stern realizes, fuck, my bluff has been called. This is only going to become an even bigger story if he continues to sit out. What they finally resolve on is Mahmoud will stand for the anthem, but he would alternate between different displays. Sometimes would just have his head bowed and silently recite Islamic prayers. Sometimes he would raise his hands up towards the sky, which is just like a symbol of reaching out towards God in the Islamic faith. So taking the moment instead as like kind of just a moment of reflection and prayer for himself as opposed to, participating in the anthem. That's kind of the compromise that they settle on. To this point, his career has largely, he's still a starting player, still averaging like 20 points a game. For whatever reason, after this season, the Denver Nuggets don't have an interest in extending his contract. So he goes and signs for the Sacramento Kings, where all basketball dreams go to die. He plays 2 seasons there, sees his minutes decrease from 36 minutes a game in his last season in Denver. It goes to 28 in his first season in Sacramento. In his second season, albeit dealing with injuries, he does fall to 17 minutes a game. And it's, it becomes clear, there's kind of a silent blackballing that's going on here. So with that being the case, he chose to go over and play in Turkey for the next season. Played for Fenerbahce. Did come back for one more season playing for those Vancouver Grizzlies, as James referenced. Played the 2000-2001 season for him, and, perhaps this represented a softening. Maybe there was a way back forward for Mahmoud to, be a part of the NBA again. The controversy is somewhat in the past. But ahead of the 2001-2002 NBA season, there were the September 11th attacks. And Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf was interviewed for Real Sports on HBO shortly thereafter. It was supposed to be just a profile on him, but he could not resist giving his own opinions on what he thought happened on 9/11. And if you can't tell by the way that I'm phrasing this, his own opinions are not accepting of what the common consensus is. Thinks it was an inside job, has some anti-Semitic theories as to how it was an inside job.
He was ahead of his time. This would have been perfect for him now.
Well, no, imagine the cognitive dissonance of the people that would largely, go along with this idea now, realizing they are siding. I was thinking as you were talking about Cap, there's a lot of talk about Cap being, Kaepernick, that is, being a secret Muslim because of his hatred for the American anthem and the country and all of that, which largely unfounded. But anyway, there's a lot of that secret Muslim talk. This is just a dude who out and out converted and is named Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and I'm not going to make anything of that. But again, the people that would subscribe to anti-Semitic 9/11 truther conspiracies would love everything that he's saying, and their brains would explode when trying to process who the quote was attributed to.
What's the Chappelle bit? Clayton Bigsby?
The Black Klansman?
The Black
Klansman.
Well, this will be the first time that anybody's ever said this in this podcast, but I'm glad you brought up the KKK, Xavier. So as you can imagine, this anti-American sentiment is especially not going to fly in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. And Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf had a nice house back home in Mississippi that he had built. This house was burnt to the ground. It was confirmed to be arson. It was confirmed to have been committed by the Ku Klux Klan. However, because, they are fucking coward pieces of shit, and they obviously famously wear hoods, nobody ever positively identified an individual who was involved with it, and therefore no charges were ever filed. But, that just to help illustrate the kind of vitriol that Mahmoud was subject to for loudly stating incorrect opinions about 9/11, but I think it's also important to recognize that, at least part of it is built up resentment from him converting to Islam, from him doing the national anthem protest beginning in 1996. And, people were being fuckheads about that even at the time. So in 1996, there were some shock jocks from Colorado that stormed a mosque and played the Star Spangled Banner over a boombox. Not a mosque that Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf attended, to be clear. They just found a place where Muslims worshipped and chose to be assholes. So, obviously, in taking his stands, they're controversial in hindsight. They were like nuclear levels of controversial at the time. And, speaking only of the national anthem protest, I think it shows a lot of courage to stand up for that. And, Colin Kaepernick himself was very clear in, referencing Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf when his whole thing was going on, recognizing him as the predecessor. And I do think it's interesting as a footnote. Fairly recently, Mahmoud released an autobiography, and it was published by Colin Kaepernick's publishing house. So, obviously those two have that connection now, looking out for each other. And as we fast forward to now, Mahmoud is still playing in the Big Three. He was a founding member of the Big Three. Still keeps in extraordinary shape, because he is I think he's like 53 now. He is 56, and still playing in the Big Three league, which is obviously not serious basketball. It is. I recently saw it described as prison ball for retired NBA players, and I think that's
you go to get then kicked out as a drunken fan who gets to heckle all the players.
Now. I don't know who you're referring to, Xavier. But that fan wasn't drunk. That fan was just angry. No. But when we just look at Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf on a whole, very obviously so far ahead of his time. With his 3-point shooting, but then also with his, being really the first athlete to play in an American sports league and say, "Hey guys, wait a second." The meme, "Are we the baddies?" I think America might be the baddies.
What if this country isn't the greatest thing ever? What if these aren't freedom throws that I'm taking at the at the freedom throw line? I do have one question on that topic, if I may interrupt for a moment. We talk about him finishing with the Vancouver Grizzlies. What did he do during the Canadian national anthem? Do we know?
That's very curious. I wasn't unable to find anything about that.
Okay. I'll look into that if that's the case, I'll look into that for litigation.
Yeah, I would think that he was probably pretty chill with it. Canada, I think historically has a much better relationship with the Islamic community than
with
America
with that
does.
community. Maybe not all minority communities, but yes, with that one, they have a better one.
Right. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, but that's everything I got on Mahmoud. I think just one of the most fascinating case studies in the history of American sports. And, I think if he came around 20 years later, I think we're talking about him as one of the best players in the NBA right now, just ahead of his time with his play style, ahead of his time with his defiance of norms and, questioning the history of America. And again, let it just be said, this is not an endorsement of all the things he said. Some of the things he said were dumb. But nonetheless, a fascinating character in the history of basketball.
I think part of his flaw is just like he is falling into the trap that'll kind of come up naturally if you define yourself as an anti-establishment person or like an outside thinker. And I'm not trying to like call his religious convictions or anything like that into question. But there is definitely like an element of counterculture that he is embodying. And when you kind of become an avatar of that counterculture, I think there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction in the aftermath of a lot of things to like take what is just automatically the contrarian stance. And yeah, in this particular case regarding the 9/11 terrorist attacks, probably not the best time to let that freak flag fly. But hopefully we can, in the next couple of weeks as we consider his case, find some maybe modern day contrition about his words. And in the meantime, I can like understand why, given his history, that would just come out in the immediate aftermath. I do have, Diaz, if you don't mind, just one question for you, one little trivia question. I pulled up his basketball reference page. And it is kind of incredible to see pretty good made three rate. Do you know what his career per 36 3-pointers made was?
Per 36 3-pointers made. Made, not attempted.
Made, yeah.
I'm going to say we're probably like right at about 2.
1.1. 1.1. Really just like a talent squandered in his day. And that is unfortunate.
So far ahead of his time. And like, dude, like the thing was too, like he wasn't just a 3-point shooter. Like he participated in the dunk contest in I think his 3rd or 4th season. Like he was a dynamite shooter who also had explosive athleticism. You know, if he came up today, we could have been talking about like, imagine if Russell Westbrook could shoot like Steph Curry.
Oh my goodness. I would love to. I have such a soft spot for Russell Westbrook. No, I mean, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, truly a man out of time. And we, folks, are out of time now. We have come to the end of our time here today at Remember That Guy. We appreciate you joining us for the story of yet another game-breaking guy. And we'll be back with another one next week. It is only thanks to the efforts of producer Craig and the coders behind him, our musical director Don Ham, and the 2 people joining me that we are able to keep doing this. So we thank all of those folks. We thank you as well for joining us. Go check out the Lachlan Morton docs on YouTube. Truly just like triumph of the human will cycling in some really beautiful vistas. Highly recommend watching it. Again, you can probably find a link to that in the description if I remember to put that YouTube link there. And you can find links to all kinds of other things at bit.ly/rememberthatguy, all one word, all lowercase. Gentlemen, do you have anything else for the good, beautiful people at home before we head out here?
Nothing for me.
You can put a bell or a here, James, but
Okay.
if Tyrese Halliburton is out for Game 6, and if he's out for Game 7, TJ McConnell will be the NBA Finals MVP. He will lead them to 2 wins.
The boldest called shot I have heard in my entire life. I love it. That is the most Diaz hot take I think you've ever pulled off.
The only reason TJ McConnell is not scoring 30 a game in these finals is because they're not giving him enough minutes. If they give him enough minutes, I mean, dude, his per 36 points in the finals, I think, is like 30. Like, I think it's 32. He is the most unguardable player on the court. In a game that features Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Pascal Siakam, and all these incredible players, it is TJ McConnell who is the least guardable player on the court. And he will be Finals MVP if they give him the minutes to allow him to be.
TJ McConnell is your Finals MVP, and I've been one of your hosts, James.
I've been the very special guest, Xavier.
And I'm Diaz, and as they say in Arabic, Inshallah, Mashallah, Gaishallah.
Pronunciation was terrible.
I'm very not Muslim.
Where's she headed off to?
Punta Cana.
Ooh, nice. You couldn't do that for your batch party, though. It'd be a betrayal of everyone on the island.
Well, I mean, from that perspective, too, and, like, also, she has a more reasonably sized group. Like, there's, like, 7 of them going, which I feel like is more average.
Yeah.
But, like, dude, like, the list that, like, for mine, like, that list had cuts. That's the tough thing. Like, I like, when I wrote it all out, I was like, oh, there's nowhere that will accommodate this size of a group.
We got to pare it down.
Even still, like it's gonna be.
I want to see the hard knocks of the locker room as you're deciding who to cut from the roster towards the end.
Yeah. Hey, bud. So we appreciate everything you've contributed to this friendship. And we expect that to continue on into the future. This decision doesn't change anything.
See, I'm glad you took it that way, because I was thinking of Miracle when Herb Brooks calls Ralph in as the last cut for the Olympic team. That's the more personal, more gut-wrenching way of doing it.
To make a something, you got to crush a few something.